Continuing in the First Global Revolution, Chapter 8, and this is Part 6. Finally, we must mention the question of leadership and especially the high qualities looked for in the person of the Secretary General. This subject has been usefully discussed in a recent report of the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation. The UN Charter described the holder as essentially the chief administrative officer of the organization, but it soon became obvious that important political mediating and leadership functions were inevitable. In the reformed and active United Nations of the future, the image of the Secretary General is vitally important. For millions of people throughout the world, he personalizes what would otherwise be seen as yet another vast bureaucratic machine. The qualities desired in this individual are almost superhumanly demanding. He or she, there has never yet been a feminine candidate, must be brave and at the same time cautious, may have an outstanding grasp of the world situation and problems, have a high degree of objectivity, and be able to project an image of impartiality, be highly intelligent and diplomatic, be innovative, and appear as great a world leader. Not least the rigor of the function is such that an enormous physical stamina is demanded. The process of finding and appointing a Secretary General appears to be curiously haphazard, hidden in mist of fear, which takes place under the shadow of the veto. Candidates emerge unsystematically, either self-promoted or suggested by governments. It is an essentially in-house affair, names being discussed in corridors and in innumerable meeting rooms, and in practice the final decision is taken by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council and endorsed by the General Assembly. There are many wise people of stature outside diplomatic and government circles who possess the necessary qualities, and with every respect to the present incumbent, we suggest that for the future a more open and systematic selection method should be devised in order to find the best man for the job. The capacity to govern. This leads to a general reprisal of the qualities which are called for in those we select to govern us. Reform of structures, procedures, and attitudes will be of little avail unless men and women of the right quality and capacity are willing to serve, and the citizens capable of appreciating these qualities are willing to vote for them. It is simply not good enough that access to leadership be achieved through good television performances and simplistic speeches aimed at manipulating the masses into enthusiastic support with empty promises and avoidance of realities. There can be no generalized identikit for the appropriate qualities in view of the diversity of situations and cultures. However, against the need for leaders with a new profile for a new world, we note some indication of the qualities to be sought. Bullet 1. A strategic vision and a global approach to the priority elements of the problem of T. 2. A capacity for innovation and adjustment to change. 3. An ethical perspective, making no concessions to expediency. 4. Effectiveness in taking decisions after due dialogue with colleagues and advisors, and ensuring the implementation of the decisions and in due time and assessing the results. 5. A capacity to learn and encourage others to learn. 6. Courage to challenge his or her mind as perceptions of situations and problems deepen in today's confrontational climate. This can at times be political suicide. 7. Ability to inform the public clearly of the general direction of policy in a way which encourages them to identify. 8. Capacity to regulate strategy and tactics to their proper place as means and not as ends. 9. Willingness to set up systems through which he can listen in to the needs of the citizens, their fears, demands, and suggestions. These then are some of the desiderata. What about the present realities? At present, even in those countries where corruption in government is not rampant, the rewards of leadership, while in theory those of serving society and the satisfaction of doing a good job, are in practice all too often enjoyment of power. Hence, those who present themselves for election tend to be individuals with more than the average of vanity and the urge for power over others. These are hardly the criteria for the selection of the wisest people to govern the world. through the difficulties of the revolution. As things are now, many people of high quality are potentially national or world leaders. Avoid entering the political arena with all its vulgarity and backbiting and the paucity of its awards for those for whom power is not the primary consideration. Much attention is therefore required with regard to the selection of our leaders. At present, this is done by a survival of the fittest process, which tends to select persons who are overtly self-seeking and at times willing even to sacrifice the common good for their personal or party ambitions. The qualities which are essential for the attainment of high office are thus frequently the very attributes which make the individual unfit for it. Charisma is an extremely important asset for a leader, but it is not sufficient, and it is very often associated with other less desirable qualities. Yet thanks to television, charisma is probably the most important ingredient in gaining election. It is difficult to see how this can be changed. It will certainly not happen from within the system, and there is therefore a need for wise individuals without political ambition to expose these problems to the public. Political decisions are seldom based on rationality. They are normally made, in each individual case, on a complex mixture of intuition, usually drawn from experience, personal motivations, often unconscious, constraints of political dogma, and expediency. This is unlikely to change, but the process can be educated much better and more thoroughly analyzed. Information can be made available, motivations can be more concisely recognized and thus modified, and expediency can be replaced if the system permits longer-term considerations. In the changing circumstances which we have assumed throughout, it is essential that forward-looking governments at all levels develop an extent of policy entrepreneurship and not merely attempt to maintain stability and harmony amid the swirl of confusing events. It is necessary that the ship of state not be only kept afloat, but that it should be steered surely and deliberately toward a desired destination. Thus, future governments must learn to become, to a degree, social architects. For this purpose, a much deeper and continuing discussion of issues is required within the framework of national and world trends. The staff function becomes ever more important, and the whole art and science of policy advice comes into question. Policy advisors should not consist wholly or mainly of officials, but should include individuals from many disciplines and without party political affiliation. The whole question of policy analysts is an open book, and much thought needs to be given as to how this aspect of the staff function can be utilized. And that finishes Chapter 8, and we'll pick up in the next video in Chapter 9.